Yes, so we are in Georgia. We're in Tbilisi, and so you were here until you were 8 years old.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, yes. So from the laws side of the legislation, I couldn't find any animal legislation. I mean, maybe there is some out there. Maybe I need to look more, but from a
let me put it like this. It exists in theory. There are laws against animal cruelty. Just recently, new legislation has been passed about more humane conditions for farm animals, particularly cattle. So I don't know the specifics of the legislation, but I know that some legislation exists.
Yeah.
The problem is in enforcing the legislation. That is something that doesn't happen very often. Unfortunately, one of the biggest problems when it comes to animals in Georgia is the attitude of people towards them. So, especially in the countryside, that is where you have most of the farm animals, the attitude is, okay, it has to have some sort of value for me, right? If it's a cattle, it has an economic value, right? It produces meat or milk or whatever. If it is a cat, it's there to keep rodents off my property. If it is a dog, it is to protect my property. And unfortunately, there's of course people who love their animals, but there is also a not too small amount of people who really just view them as things. Things that when they are broken and no longer fulfill their purpose can be discarded and replaced with a newer version. You'll very often, when you leave the city and you go to the countryside, you'll very often see dogs just chained up for the whole life. They're chained up on a chain this long.
And that's just how it is.
Yes, because the dog is there to protect the property. It shouldn't be running around. Are you crazy? It's often even worse for cats. There's in some parts of the population almost a hatred towards cats, which I have no idea where it is from, but I have some neighbors who just hate cats with a passion.
Viscerally.
Yes. And here's the thing, I grew up with dogs. I never had a cat, so I also had a lot of misunderstandings about cats, and I did not like cats particularly. They were not my most favorite pet, but I never experienced hatred for a cat. I mean, it's an animal. If it comes up to you, you pet it. So I wouldn't necessarily maybe have kept a cat until I got myself a cat, but I would not just kick it or shoot at it, which are things that happen here, unfortunately. So yeah, there is a lot of animal cruelty going on, and I don't even know where it comes from. It's almost as if there's some crazy virus going around people, making them angry. That's my impression sometimes. Because it doesn't really do you any harm, right? This animal just like casually living on the street. If anything, it's keeping rodents away.
Well,
right?
this is it. People forget they're so quick to think, oh, but the negatives. Well, think of the positives. You know, you take away the cats, well, hello, rats.
Yes, exactly. And then you go in the countryside, you have snakes and all of that, and cats hunt them actually. Bigger cats can hunt down snakes, and
absolutely.
I am horrified of snakes, so that
there we
go cats. But no, I think a lot of it, of course, comes from a lack of education, from a lack of awareness that yes, this is actually an animal, it is a living being, it has rights, it has feelings. And it won't hurt you to show empathy, right? Nothing will happen to you.
Yeah, what's the worst that can happen?
Exactly, but then if you, for generations, have been living in an environment where you were not taught to show empathy, where is that going to come from, right?
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. You know, we can't. You are sort of the nature versus nurture debate, and you know you learn empathy. You follow what your family or whoever is doing. So we can't expect. It takes so much time, and it's not a problem we can solve overnight. You can't expect people to have the same attitudes always as you do. So it's our
So coming back to the problem of enforcement, so if you're, for example, somewhere in the countryside, and then you observe animal cruelty, chances are very high that whoever you're supposed to report this to will be having the same kind of attitude, right? So they will not even be understanding why you're reporting this in the first place. Okay. I'll actually even go further. So when this new legislation was passed about humane treatment of cattle, a lot of people were making fun of it. From the perspective of, look, there's so many problems for the humans living in this country. There's so much poverty and social problems. Should we really be focusing on animals? Which is not my perspective, but just a perspective that was voiced a lot. And to a certain degree, I can understand where these people are coming from. It's very hard to focus on the welfare of another being when your own basic needs are not met. It's like Maslow's pyramid of needs, right?
Yes.
So it's a very difficult and complicated issue.
You sort of go back and forth, don't you? Because you can empathize with people having that perspective, because, you know, the last thing that you're thinking of when you're struggling to, you know, put food and bills, and especially in today's climate, the cost of living is tough. People are struggling. So I can understand why perhaps animals are at the bottom of the priorities. Yeah. I think, yes, I can understand, but it's almost because it's almost, what am I trying to say, like, because they often get overlooked. If you can show love and compassion for the animals that are overlooked at the bottom of the priorities, then everything's like a ripple effect. Everything can benefit from that. But
I agree. So and I mean, also from my experience, some of the people who do most for animals here that I have met are people who are not really very well off themselves, right? I mean, there are occasional, let's say, richer people who sponsor shelters and all of it, but a lot of it is done by just a regular person who basically sacrifices their time, their income, because they see injustice and they say, I have a skill set that allows me to address one part of this injustice, and this is what I'm going to do because this is my duty as a human being. And it is very often the less well-off who do this. I noticed that. So I know people who keep 20, 30 cats in their apartment because they just cannot walk past a cat on the street in need. And then they, of course, they collect donations because it is probably impossible to keep 30 cats, right?
Yes, I can't imagine.
But yes, they take them in despite knowing that it will be a hardship for them.
Yes, with this information. And, you know, I have actually been, well, the 5 months that I've been here, I've been blown away by when you see compassion here, it is, you know, incredible. There's for example, my neighbour, every morning, every night, and they're feeding, and all the cats obviously know her, and they have this trust going on, and it's incredible. And you just think that she's just an ordinary, you know, before work probably she does this, after work every day, and there are so many people like that, and they are, it's heartwarming, humbling to see that, and that's what you've got to hold on to, really, because there are these people that are out there, and there will always be, you know, no matter what, there will always be these people. So it's the future, that there is hope for the future.
Absolutely
believe that.
So it's quite well structured for dogs. It's less well structured for cats. But what is very common here is that you sort of take ownership of a set of animals living on the street around you. Yes, for dogs, it's those, you know, you probably notice that there's dogs with a tag in their ear. Those are sort of adopted street dogs, so to say. Okay. There's no direct translation for the Georgian word for this, but basically what it means is there is a person registered officially who is responsible for this dog, a person who feeds them, a person who takes them to the vet or administers all the important vaccinations themselves and sort of looks after them. And this tag is a sign for the municipal shelters, you know, we shouldn't pick up this dog because it actually has somebody to look after. It lives on the street, which is unfortunate, but it's better than having it completely abandoned, right? Yes. And especially in the city, a lot of these dogs with tags, they are very well taken care of. They are
surprised.
Yes, because they are not starving, and then very often when you touch the fur, with an animal, by the quality of the fur, you can know if it has receiving good food or not. Yes, they have nice soft fur and everything, and they receive dewormer, and it's very nice that now, a few years ago it was not like that, but now like drop-on dewormer is starting to arrive in the country. A few years ago it was not available. But now that it's here, you can sort of have a spot-on treatment on the neck that treats worms, all kinds of internal parasites, external parasites, all of it. And that's a very good thing that it actually started coming into the country. Even for people like me, whose cat goes absolutely violent on you if you try to give it a dewormer. So, I took it to the vet once for the dewormer. He shredded me and the vet, and we both agreed that I'm going to opt for the spot-on treatments now.
Spot-on.
But, well, for cats there is no tagging system, right?
No, I've not seen the tags.
Yes. What is done sometimes for cats, if it is a street cat, for example, and you have it sterilized, then they clip off just a tiny bit at the ear. So if you ever see a cat that has a bit on the ear clipped off, that means this cat has been neutered. I don't know if all vets do that, but apparently that is one of the things how vets can notify others that this cat has already been neutered and taken care of, right? There is a program from the municipality to have free neutering. There's a huge queue for it, unfortunately. You have to call and you have to sign up for it, and it's not the most highly quality sterilization, to put it like that, but at least it exists. It's an effort.
Yes.
It's an effort, right? Exactly. And many private vets give discounts if you say it's a street animal.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's definitely something that's happening. But again, the same as you said with the UK, right? It's, again, individuals stepping in a space where actually the government should be doing the majority of the heavy lifting.
This is almost a theme that runs through everything, and it's, you know, you see such selfless behaviour and you just think, oh, if this could, you know, you see this coming from individuals, and then the people who have the power to change things, you know, really, don't always step up to the task.
They are, the legislation in Georgia when it comes to shelters is very complicated. And basically, from what I understood, is a shelter is a responsibility of the state, so shelter should be municipal. So there is a few private shelters, but from what I understood is they operate in some sort of like legal gray area. So the legal framework for it is really extremely complicated. I haven't even understood it myself completely, but what I know is that shelters by law have to be municipal. And private shelters, while they exist, run in some sort of legal gray zone. I know two ladies who operate a cat shelter, and basically when you transfer money to the shelter, you transfer it into their own personal account. They do not have a registered account for the shelter. They do not have the shelter registered as an organization. They're renting an apartment in their own name, and they're receiving payments in their own bank accounts to sort of pay the rent, pay for the lights, pay for the feed, and all of it. So I think this is definitely something, if that were addressed, and if private shelters received more rights legally, they would also have better access to funding and donations. A lot of donations really happen just on the account of the person who is the owner of the shelter, which is very strange, right? It sounds so alien to us coming from Western countries, right? So it's very unfortunate. And the municipal shelters, they're horribly underfunded, really horribly underfunded. They very often, if they pick up an animal, they will keep it for a few days, and then if it is sick, it gets euthanized, and if it is not sick, it gets released back on the streets. So for example, if you lost a pet and they found it, they will give you a few days to contact them, and then it gets released on the streets because they just do not have the space or the financial means to really care for them in the way that they should be cared for.
So this is causing this grey area. I think, well, that's something that could help for the future, some clarification on, what should, again, it comes back to the individuals taking responsibility for this when, in fact, it shouldn't be all the onus on the individual.
Exactly. I mean, the same, for example, there's a huge problem in Georgia when it comes to sterilization and castration. A lot of people do not realize the importance of neutering your animals, right? The other day, I saw an amazing statistic. So if you, assuming 2 litters per year and 2 surviving kittens per litter, if you sterilize 1 female, 1 male cat, after 8 years, you would have removed 2 million potential cats off the streets, right? That's amazing, right? That's how it compounds in 8 years. Yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a ton of misconceptions. You could do a whole episode on misconceptions about neutering in Georgia. And there is, again, a few private vets who are trying to do an information campaign about why it is so important to neuter your animals. But at least where I've looked, I haven't seen a government-sponsored information campaign on this topic, right? Not even from the government-run shelters. If we could address just this part, that would solve a massive chunk of the uncontrolled street animal population in Georgia.
Yes, this is something that is quite it's a low effort situation from the government perspective.
Yes.
Okay, we'll put this message out, but the impact could be
massive,
phenomenal impact.
Yes.
So you have, again, individuals, private vets trying to fight for this.
Yes.
When something that could easily be taken on board to influence everybody is bottom of the priorities again, which again we do. Of course, we have empathy and we understand there are so many issues, but it just seems so doable.
Absolutely.
It does. What's stopping you from just putting the information out there?
Exactly.
And then the effect would be massive. I mean, we have, sterilization attempts and efforts, but it doesn't seem to be the full, so we'll do, let's sterilize into BC.
Yeah.
Without thinking about the movement of animals around the country. So obviously it helps, everything helps, but it's not going to solve the issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So you have in bigger cities, like Tbilisi and Sreta, Kutaisi, where you have a municipal shelter. You don't have a municipal shelter in every city, right? But those where you have one, they will have occasional, like I mentioned, free neutering events where but you have to call, you have to sign up in advance, and there is a queue to sign up for it and to wait for it. So yes, there are some hurdles, but they are not unsurmountable hurdles, and it wouldn't be too difficult to infuse a tiny bit more funding into it, to have a wider reach. Like I said, 2 cats today, 2 million less cats in 8 years.
8 years, that's not even...
8 years is not a lot.
Lifetime for us, it's like a...
It's nothing, it's really not that long.
It could really help. So that would make a big change.
A massive change.
Imagine hedgehogs in nursery in Georgia could be a big... Something as little as that, could be, again, a big change. It's not only changing the legislation, changing attitudes, it takes time, but it's doable, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Slow steps.
The struggles that we have here, they are not unsurmountable. The problem is that there seems no motivation or no incentive for people in charge to address these issues. That is the bigger thing. Because from the side of the population, there's quite a lot of... It's maybe a minority, but there are very vocal demands for all of these. There's a lot of people here who are concerned with the situation of the street animals and who realize that the solution is to have better shelters, or let's say shelters with more capacity, and really thorough neutering programs. They realize that, but they cannot do it on themselves. You really need the government to step up here.
The ones with the power.
Yeah.
This is it. So we can spread the information, we can put pressure and hope for the future. There is hope. Always, always. The stories that I've heard from here, from this country, the things that I've seen so much compassion. You know, the people that care really care, and that will just bring us through to
Yes, when those people come together, I've seen true miracles happen to some animals.
Yeah.
So yes, those people, they're what gives me hope. Like whenever I see another abandoned kitten, I read about a story where, you know, somebody was saved and rehomed, and just gives me back a tiny bit of hope.
It is. What we see sometimes is devastating, and there are a lot of sadness, but you just need the stories here and there of the positive, and it just fills your hope back up.
Yes.
This is it. So yeah, it's been, well, I can't thank you enough for all of your insights and information, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Hello! Oh, look at this cutie! Oh, hello! Oh, right? And then we hear about stories like the two of you.
Oh, I think,
and then you're purring great. Oh.
Thank you all for watching, and we can't wait for you to tune in. And yeah, we'll have episodes every Friday, so you can hear more stories.
Thank you for listening. We will now go and cuddle with some kittens.